The test is in 4 parts, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a student and an advisor talking about facilities at a college.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi, I wonder if you could help me. I'm starting a course at Glenfield in a few weeks. I was just a bit worried about what facilities there will be and what I'll have to do. I'm especially interested in health and welfare stuff.
Certainly. We normally send out a copy of our leaflet, Staying Healthy at Glenfield. I'm not sure why you haven't had it.
Well, could you answer a few questions for me? Firstly, I'm wondering about how I get a doctor when I arrive.
Well, you can register with the University Health Centre on North Campus.
And do I have to pay for that?
Not to register, but if you have to get medicines, there's a prescription charge of £6.50.
OK. Well, I'm not planning to get ill. That's only going to arise if I have any problems. So, should I just go along when I arrive?
That's what we recommend for peace of mind, but it's not compulsory, and if you don't live inside the catchment area, you can't in fact register there. Where do you live?
Well, at the moment I'm staying at the Backpackers Hostel in Hill Street, but I will be moving from there shortly, somewhere nearer.
Well, there's a map at the centre which shows you the area that the university practice can accept people from. It's what we call the yellow zone. If you live outside that area, you have to find another medical centre to register with.
It sounds like I'll only qualify after I move.
I think you might be right. Then, in addition to the health centre, there's a free counselling service for all students situated on the North Campus. You don't have to register. They also have drop-in sessions. I say it's free, but that's only for up to 8 sessions. Beyond that, they normally refer people elsewhere.
Sounds serious.
Well, it's not just for big problems. People go there for advice on housing, workload, whatever, really. They can even arrange financial help.
Is it confidential?
Absolutely. Then again, a lot of students prefer to phone the Nightline service, which is run from an office on the central campus. They don't really encourage people to drop in.
I see.
So it's basically a free phone line. The number, if you want to make a note, is 0900 762 5913. I'll say it again. 0900 762 5913.
Fine. Well, I hope I won't need any of these. What I will want is access to some gym facilities.
Right. Well, you'll find those on the South Campus in the Sports Centre. It's great, but it's not free. You have to present your student card and pay a fee of £22 to get a pass. But that will last you for the whole year.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Is this information on the website?
I'm afraid not. I can send you some leaflets or even resend the whole information pack if you give me your details.
Could you send the whole information pack, please?
Yes, that's fine. I'll have to take down some details. Could you tell me your full name?
Sonia Orr.
S-O-N-Y...
No, I'll spell it. S-O-N-I-A Then or is O-R-R.
Or. OK. And you said you were on Hills Road?
Yes, but don't send it there as I'm about to move. I'll give you my new address, which is 22 Winter Gardens. That's Glenfield.
And the postcode?
Oh, yeah. That's GF23 9BQ.
Fine. Now, we're doing a bit of data collection about who uses our services at the moment. Can I just ask a few more questions?
Yes, that's fine.
OK. If you're an international student, what country are you from?
I'm from Switzerland.
And how old are you?
I'm 24.
And finally, which course are you enrolled on?
Right. Well, that's a bit complicated, since I'm hoping to switch to economics and history.
But at the moment...
I'm down to do economics and sociology. It's a joint degree.
OK, I'll put that. Great. Well, I'll pop the information pack in the post, and you should get it soon.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a tour guide welcoming a group of visitors to the British Library and telling them about the library and what they will see there. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your very own tour of the British Library on this lovely afternoon. My name is Tony Walters, and I'm your guide for today. Could I please see your tickets for the guided tour? I'd also like to remind you that any tickets bought today do not include a visit to the reading rooms. I'm afraid we don't do visits on Fridays, or any weekday during working hours, so as not to disturb the readers. But if you do want to see those rooms, the only day there are tours is on Sundays. So, I don't want anyone to be disappointed about that today. OK? Thank you. Right, we'll start with a brief introduction. As many of you know, this is the United Kingdom's National Library. And you can see that this is a magnificent modern building. It was first designed by Sir Colin St. John Wilson in 1977 and inaugurated by Her Majesty the Queen more than 20 years later in 1998. As you can see, the size is immense, and the basements alone have 300 kilometres of shelving, and that's enough to hold about 12 million books. The total floor space here is 100,000 square metres, and, as I'll show you, the library houses a huge range of facilities and exhibition spaces. And it has 1,000 staff members based here in the building. So, you can appreciate the scale of our operation. In fact, this was the biggest publicly funded building constructed in the United Kingdom last century. It is still funded by the government as a national institution, of course, and it houses one of the most important collections in the world. The different items come from every continent and span almost 3,000 years. The library isn't a public library, though. You can't just come in and join and borrow any of the books. Access to the collections is limited to those involved in carrying out research. So it's really a huge reference library for that purpose. and anyone who wants to consult any materials that are kept here can formally apply to use the library reading rooms.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Right, well, here we are, standing at the meeting point on the lower ground floor, just to the right of the main entrance. I've given you all a plan of the building so that we can orientate ourselves and get an idea of where we'll be going. Now, outside the main entrance, you'll see the wide piazza with the stunning sculpture of Newton. The sculptor was Paolozzi, but it's based on the famous image by William Blake, and it's definitely worth a closer look. On the other side of the piazza from the statue is the conference centre, which is used for all kinds of international conventions. We'll take a quick look inside at the end of our tour. Looking ahead of us now, you'll see that we're standing opposite the staircase down to the basement, where you'll find the cloakroom. And to the left of that, we have the information desk, where you can find out about any current exhibitions, the times of the tours, and anything you need to know, if you don't have a tour guide. As you can see, on this lower ground floor, we also have a bookshop. That's the area over to the left of the main entrance. You'll be free to browse there when we get back to the ground floor. Now, opposite the main entrance on this floor, we have the open stairs leading up to the upper ground floor. And at the top of them, in the middle of the upper ground floor, you can see a kind of glass-sided tower that rises all the way up through the ceiling and up to the first floor. This is called the King's Library. It's really the heart of the building. It was built to house the collection that was presented to the nation in 1823 by the King. You can see it from every floor above ground. When we go up there, you'll find the library's treasures gallery on the left. Can you find it on your plan? That's the exciting one. So we'll be visiting that first, but we'll also take a look at the stamp display situated behind it on the way to the cafe. A lot of people miss that. The cafeteria runs along the back of the floor, and in the right-hand corner, you'll find the lifts and toilets. Always good to locate them. The other main area on that floor is the public access catalogue section, and I'll show you how that operates when we get up there.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
Hear an interview conducted by an interviewer special with the scientist Peter Piot, who discovered Ebola, a dangerous disease. Both of them are conversing about the disease and its origin.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Professor Pite, As a young scientist in Antwerp, you were part of the team that discovered the Ebola virus in 1976. Can you tell how did it happen?
I still remember. Some day in September, a pilot from Sabina Airlines brought us a shiny blue thermos and a letter from a doctor in Kinshasa, in what was then Zara in the thermos. He wrote there was a blood sample from a Belgian nun who had recently fallen ill from a mysterious sickness in Yambuku, a remote village in the northern part of the country. He asked us to test the sample for yellow fever.
These days, Ebola may only be researched in high-security laboratories. How did you protect yourself back then?
We had no idea how dangerous the virus that we were dealing with was. And there were no high-security labs in Belgium back then. We just wore our white lab coats and protective gloves. When we opened the thermos, the ice inside had largely melted and one of the valves had broken. Blood and glass shards were floating in ice water. We fished the other, intact test tube out of the slop and began examining the blood for pathogens using the methods that were standard at the time.
But the yellow fever virus apparently had nothing to do with the nun's illness.
No, and the test for Lassa fever and typhoid fever were also negative. What then could be? Our hopes were dependent on being able to isolate the virus from the sample. To do so, we injected it into mice and other lab animals. At first, nothing happened for several days. We thought that perhaps the pathogen had been damaged from insufficient refrigeration in the thermos. But then, one animal after the next began to die. We began to realize that the sample contained something quite deadly.
But you continued.
Other samples from the nun who had just died arrived from Kinshasa. When we were just about able to begin examining the virus under the electron microscope, the World Health Organization entrusted us to send all of our samples to a high-security lab in England. But my boss at the time wanted to bring our work to a conclusion no matter what. He grabbed a vial containing virus material to examine it, but his hand was shaking and he dropped it on a colleague's foot. The vial shattered. My only thought was, oh shit! We immediately disinfected everything, and luckily our colleague was wearing thick leather shoes. Nothing happened to any of us.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Were finally able to create an image of the virus using the electron microscope.
Yes, and our first thought was, what the hell is that? The virus that we'd spent so much time searching for was a very big, long and worm-like. It had no similarities with yellow fever. Rather, it looked like the extremely dangerous Marburg virus, which, like Ebola, causes a hemorrhagic fever. In the 1960s, the virus killed several laboratory workers in Marburg, Germany.
Were you afraid at that point?
I knew almost nothing about the Marburg virus at the time. When I tell my students about it today, they think I must be from the Stone Age. But I actually had to go to the library and look it up in the Atlas of Virology. It was the American Center for Disease Control which determined a short time later that it wasn't the Marburg virus, but a related unknown virus. Hundreds of people had already succumbed to the virus in Yambuku and the area around it.
You were also the one who gave the virus its name. Why Ebola?
On that day, our team sat together till late into the night. We had a couple of drinks discussing the question. We definitely didn't want to name the new pathogen Yambuku virus, because that would have stigmatized the place forever. There was a map hanging on the wall, and our American team leader suggested looking at the nearest river and giving the virus its name. It was the Ebola River. So by around 3 or 4 in the morning, we had found a name. But the map was small and inaccurate. We only learned later that the nearest river was actually a different one. But Ebola is a nice name, isn't it?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the school calendar. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So, having seen that the 6-term system has passed the test of cost-effectiveness, we can move on to the educational aspects of this arrangement. Firstly, all the terms would be approximately the same length. Instead of terms up to 13 weeks, which we have now, there could be a repeating pattern of 7 weeks of term time plus 2 weeks of vacation. This would be repeated 6 times per year. How does this affect the effectiveness of the educational provision? The most noticeable result would be that the very long summer holiday would be reduced in length. This byproduct of the 6-term system could be beneficial. There's plenty of evidence of huge learning loss by pupils during the summer holidays. By learning loss, we mean the amount that pupils forget or lose during a holiday break. Ashley carried out a number of analyses which showed this conclusively. He investigated 39 studies examining the effects of summer holidays on standardized test scores. His analyses indicated that summer learning loss equaled 2 weeks to 7 weeks of instruction. On average, children's test scores were 3 weeks lower than when they left school in the previous term. He also found differences in the learning loss effect according to subject. The subjects he analysed were reading, writing and maths, and he found that the effect was greatest in maths and reading. Furthermore, although all social groups experienced roughly similar learning loss in the field of maths, the studies found that disadvantaged children showed even greater losses in reading skills. So, the problem of learning loss in traditional schools is clear. However, the results of studies into the 6-term system and learning loss are ambiguous. Marchmont found that pupils in 6-term schools maintained their test scores after the shorter holiday period. This is certainly an improvement on the traditional system where, as we have seen, pupils perform worse after the summer break. Benson, however, found no differences between those in traditional schools and on the 6-term schedule. It would seem reasonable that if long holidays result in learning loss, then shorter holidays should result in less learning loss. So we await the outcome of further studies. Historically, of course, everyone knows the reason for our system of 3 terms per year. In days when agriculture was of much greater importance in our working lives, it was essential that the children helped with the harvest. Later on, this changed, and more people moved into the towns. But then there was a new problem. Before air conditioning, it was very impractical to try to teach children in the summer months. Nowadays, that's no longer a barrier. One way of providing something different is the summer school. Here, there is a completely different kind of educational provision. Cooper and others investigated 93 summer schools and the results they achieved. They all had a positive effect on learning. Most summer schools, of course, have small classes, and class size was shown to have a positive effect. Additionally, summer school children usually benefit from a great deal of parental support, not least because payment of fees is involved, and this, as so often, was shown to produce very good outcomes. Results were most impressive, in maths in general.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.